Hello and welcome. Tonight, no headway in the talks to resolve the impasse over fuel subsidy removal, palliative and other matters as talks between representatives of the federal government and the Nigerian Labour Congress end without resolution. Tribunal affirms the victory of Dauda Lawal as the PDP as governor of Zamfara State in the March 2023 governorship election, dismisses the petition of the APC candidate Bola Matawale. And NATI puts total unremitted revenues to the Federation account by the NNPC Limited and other companies in the oil and gas sector at over $9 billion.
On Business News tonight, new FIRS boss Zach Adedeji restates commitment to achieve federal government's 18% tax to GDP target in 3 years.
On Sports News tonight, the 2023-2024 UEFA Champions League season begins on Tuesday night with reigning champions Manchester City kickstarting the defense of their title against former champions Red Star Belgrade at the Etihad.
From Abuja, the nation's capital, the National Space Research and Development Agency pledges to continue to deploy space technology in the fight against terrorism and flood disasters in the ECOWAS sub-region.
And in international news from London, 5 American citizens jailed for years in Iran have flown back to the US as part of a prisoner swap.
Yet again, the dialogue between the federal government representatives and the Nigerian Labour Congress has ended without resolution of their dispute. The NLC has threatened to embark on an indefinite strike to protest against what it termed the government's refusal to address issues bordering on workers' welfare and the non-implementation of recommendations made by the NLC on how to cushion the effects of fuel subsidy removal. At the resumption of the meeting at the Ministry of Labour and Employment, the minister gave assurances of the federal government to address all the demands while appealing to the labour leaders to strike a balance commensurate with economic realities.
The president of Nigerian Labour Congress, Mr. Joe Ajero, is leading other members of the Labour Union to this meeting with the Minister of Labour and Employment. The 2 ministers of Labour and directors in the ministry are all attending this meeting, which aims to resolve the disagreements between the federal government and the NLC and prevent the impending indefinite strike. Before the meeting enters into a closed session, the Minister of Labour appeals to the leaders of the NLC to strike a balance that reflects the current economic realities of the country.
We acknowledge the valid grievances that have fueled the recent labour crisis, and we are committed to addressing them in a just and equitable manner. We must also recognize the economic realities that confront us. As we address the concerns of our workforce, we must be mindful of striking a balance.
However, the president of the Nigerian Labour Congress appears not to have faith in this meeting, as he says he is attending with mixed feelings owing to the failure of previous meetings to address their demands.
We came with mixed feelings on whether it will work or not, because we have had so many meetings, some beyond this level.
Mr. Ajero also speaks on the crisis rocking the Nigerian Union of Road Transport Workers.
We raised the second issue of the version of the office of the National Union of Road Transport Workers. So under our watch, a trade union office has been violated. Police invaded it and removed the elected officers of that trade union office. They went ahead and killed somebody. As we talk now, those people are behind bars, a president and general secretary of a union. What are we negotiating? Even on that point alone, our strike action will move ahead with it.
The meeting proceeds into a closed-door session, after which both the minister and the NLC president briefed journalists.
Our meeting was very robust, and we had a very, very fruitful meeting. But at the end of the day, many of those items that we left are still for consideration, and before the final
agreement, or what I would call discussions.
You can see that there's no agreement on any or no implementation. There is no CNG anywhere. The refineries are not working. Wage award, transfer, there are also issues. So those are issues we believe that between now and the next few days when the ultimatum will expire, that something will happen.
This meeting with the NLC is the first since the Nigerian Labour Congress suspended a 2-day warning strike last month. A similar meeting held 2 weeks ago was only attended by members of the Trade Union Congress, TUC. As this meeting ends, there is no resolution as to whether or not the proposed indefinite strike by the NLC will still hold.
To the judiciary, the Zamfara State Governorship Election Petition Tribunal, sitting in Sokoto, has upheld the election of People's Democratic Party candidate Dauda Lawal as governor of Zamfara State after dismissing the petition of the All Progressives Congress governorship candidate Bello Matawale for lacking in merit with a fine of 500,000 naira. Mr. Matawale had filed a petition challenging the outcome of the March 18th governorship election, in which Governor Lawal was declared winner. The chairman of the 3-panel of justices, led by Justice Cordelia Ogadi, held that the petitioner did not prove his allegation of wrongful collation of election results, overvoting, and non-conduct of poll in some wards in the state. While the counsel to Governor Lawal and INEC hailed the judgment, the lead counsel to the petitioner said their client will give instruction on the next line of action.
Zamfara State Governorship Election Petition just delivered judgment lasting over 5 hours. And the summary of their judgment is that the petition against His Excellency Dauda Lawal is devoid of merit, and the tribunal dismissed it with cost of 500,000 naira. And the tribunal also affirmed that the declaration of His Excellency Dauda Lawal was properly done by the Independent National Electoral Commission in the election conducted on the 25th of March 2023. So the governor is firm on ground, and he should continue to dispense dividends of democracy to the people of Zamfara State.
The petitioner won the election in Maradu. And if you had a result sheet with the result sheet they collated, automatically the petitioner will now be declared the lawful winner of that election. But the petitioner, in their own wisdom, a tribunal says that same result should be discontinuous, that it was not done by the maker of that document. But the law has transcended beyond this level of documentary evidence. We're able to show as petitioners any document that gave us the winning structure, and the table was contained in our petition. Secondly, sir, we're also able to show that the election in Mariamaji and some other local government were inconclusive because there was no election at all, and some were cancelled because of overvoting. But now all those points were raised by petitioners. But with this judgment now, we look at the judgment, discuss our client, and take a step further, because the judgment are part of electoral processes. That is why the law established the election tribunal. We almost remain grateful to our client for engaging us to serve this legal aspect. We must ensure that any case that comes to our purview as lawyers, we must take that steps to ensure just that the matter should be done within the scope of justice and justice system of the electoral system.
Meanwhile, Governor Dauda Lawal has described the affirmation of his election victory as a confirmation of the will of the people of Zamfara State. The media aide to the governor, Suleiman Idris, in a statement in reaction to the judgment, maintained that the judgment was not surprising, but rather an affirmation of the collective decision made by the unwavering people of Zamfara State. The statement adds, the judgment will encourage Governor Lawal to continue with his resolve to fulfill his mandate and work tirelessly to ensure that the people of Zamfara State experience the benefits of good governance. It adds that Governor Lawal's rescue mission, which began on May the 29th after he was sworn in, has already made remarkable strides in improving security, education, infrastructure, and agriculture. More legal matters. The Lagos High Court sitting in Ikeja has admitted 2 documents as evidence tendered by the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC, containing an investigative report into the iPhone of an internet celebrity, Ismaila Mustafa, popularly known as Mumfa, claiming it was used for fraudulent practices. Trial judge Justice Mojisola Dada admitted the documents, which consist of a letter by the EFCC to the United States of America's Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI, and a report by the Bureau. On January 12, 2022, the EFCC had arraigned Momfa alongside his company, Ismalop Global Investment, on an 8-count charge bordering on conspiracy to launder funds amounting to 6 billion naira. Momfa had pleaded not guilty to the charges. At the proceedings today, Momfa's counsel, led by Kolawole Salami, objected to the admissibility of the two documents as evidence, but then Justice Dada overruled his objection and upheld the arguments of the prosecution, who maintained that the FBI documents were original. The judge then adjourned to November 1st, 2023 for continuation of Momfa's trial. Outside the shores of the country, President Bola Tinubu and his South African counterpart Cyril Ramaphosa are advancing ties to position both countries as economic powerhouse to move the global south forward. The bilateral engagement, which is ahead of the United Nations General Assembly in New York, United States, also seeks to have a common voice in pursuit of reforms of the Bretton Woods institutions to strengthen economic resilience of developing nations. In a statement by the president's spokesman, Mr. Ajuri Ngalale, President Bola Tinubu maintains that both countries must join hands and agree that international finance institutions require reform, as Africa is not to be a ground for economic scavenging any longer. In his response, President Ramaphosa affirmed that they would love to see Nigeria and South Africa working closely together on a number of issues. He commended President Tinubu's bold economic reforms and his leadership of ECOWAS over the coup in Niger Republic, while extending an invitation for a state visit by President Tinubu. Meanwhile, the high-level general debate at the 78th United Nations General Assembly begins tomorrow, September the 19th. It provides world leaders and heads of state the platform to lay out their priorities for the coming year, urge cooperation on pressing issues as well. Ahead of the event, there has been increased police presence and many changes to city operations to ensure assembly security. Our correspondent, Maria Bird, reports.
The 78th UN General Assembly is being met with much expectation from the world, as this assembly marks a crucial milestone in the journey towards achieving the 2030 Agenda. New York City is hosting one of the largest assemblies in recent history, as the focus will be on rebuilding trust and reigniting global solidarity, accelerating action on the 2030 Agenda and its sustainable development goals toward peace, prosperity, progress, and sustainability for all. Heads of state and government and ministers will work to solve some of the world's most challenging global issues to advance peace, security, and sustainable development. New York City Police, Transit Authority, and government officials have been preparing for one of the most high security assemblies in the world. Most of the streets in Midtown Manhattan, New York City, have been blocked off to ensure UN security. New York City is home to the United Nations. It is also making sure that it takes every precaution necessary to ensure the global leaders are safe and secure while the assembly is taking place. This General Assembly will take place in one of the largest cities in the world and is expected to host thousands of world leaders and officials during the high-level meetings and will tackle the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. From New York City, Maria Bird, Channel Television News.
In part two, after the break, NATI puts total unremitted revenues to the Federation account by the NNPC Limited and other companies in the oil and gas sector at over $8 billion. Please join us again. Welcome back. If you just joined us, you're watching the news at 10, coming to you live from Channels Television. A reminder of our top stories. No headway in the talks to resolve the impasse over fuel subsidy removal, palliative and other matters, as talks between representatives of the federal government and the Nigerian Labour Congress end without resolution. Tribunal affirms the victory of Dauda Lawal of the PDP as governor of Zamfara State in the March 2023 governorship election, dismisses the petition of the APC candidate Bola Matawale. NATI puts total unremitted revenues to the Federation account by the NNPC Limited and other companies in the oil and gas sector at over $9 billion. And 5 American citizens jailed for years in Iran have flown back to the US as part of a prisoner swap. To crime matters in Ugwu State, 9 suspects have been arrested in connection with the death of 8 people following a clash between 2 rival cult groups in Shagamu, Ugwu State, over the weekend. In a statement, the police spokesperson in the state, Omolola Udutola, explained that the arrest was made following a raid led by an assistant commissioner of police from the command. Those apprehended are identified as Ashayi Omolaja, Aziz Nofew, Matthew Adewale, and Bolaji Ogunkomaya. He said Ogunkomaya was found with the 4 people who were killed in the same room where the incident occurred, while one other suspect, Wasiu, managed to escape. According to the police, during the raid, Ogunkomaya provided statements that their leader, known as Azubuike, had earlier been arrested by the area commander. Meanwhile, the state government has imposed a dusk till dawn curfew in the affected area. So let's head to the nation's capital, and Victor Mathias is standing by to give us the very latest from our Abuja studios. Great to see you again, Victor.
Absolutely, Ayatunde. Great to see you as well, and welcome to the nation's capital. Now, the National Space Research and Development Agency is promising to continue to use space technology to provide adequate data for the fight against all forms of criminality and flood disasters in the ECOWAS sub-region. The Director General of the agency, Mr. Halilu Ahmed, stated this at an international conference on global monitoring of environment and security in Abuja. Our correspondent, Dele Omoyeni, reports.
The National Space Research and Development Agency is hosting space research agencies from across the West Africa sub-region to provide a platform for robust deliberations on the implementation of environmental policies and address insecurity within the region. The ECOWAS region has been facing various forms of insecurity, including terrorism, armed conflict, organized crime, and political instability. The agency hopes to be able to deploy its expertise in tackling some of these challenges.
If you look at it, most African countries or West African countries are bedeviled by these banditry issues. Right now, Earth observation is doing so much in the area of security, but because it is not open to the public, I think people are not aware. Now, also, it is only with Earth observation that you share data. You also know what is happening and then how it's spreading. You can also monitor pattern so that you identify the best method to stop what is happening. So this meeting will also look into the areas of security.
The agency is host to one of UN's SPIDER regional support offices in Africa, a network of providers of space-based solutions to support disaster management activities, and the agency plans to share data gathered from the network with ECOWAS member countries to combat the menace of flood disasters.
Even last year, we were able to produce maps of the areas that were flooded, and that was passed on to the authority that is in charge of floods. And you remember that some times back we were trying to set up seismic station with the Chinese. The idea is to identify areas where earthquakes are likely going to happen. And then people cannot even link earthquakes with floods, because when you have these issues, you have new drainages that are created, which are also threats to flooding. So we've been in the area where Nigeria has done so much in the area of flood. What we are trying to do now is to bring other African countries to speed, because they may not have the capacity and they don't also have the facilities to deal with this.
For 3 days, these experts will be working with partners from the European Union and the African Union to develop a network for sharing data from the satellites to improve the livelihoods of residents in the sub-region. Dele Omoyeni, Channels Television News.
Politics is heating up in Kogi State ahead of the November 11th governorship election, and the candidate of the People's Democratic Party, Mr. Dino Melaye, is saying that he is vowing to probe past administrations if he becomes governor. Now, while he says talks about an alliance among opposition parties are ongoing, Senator Melaye also reveals his plans for Ajaokuta Steel Company. He was speaking to our political correspondent, Terry Ikumi.
We have Ajaokuta Steel. We're going to appeal that the state government take over Ajaokuta Steel because we're going to make it work.
Well, but the federal government is trying to revive it now. Are you saying that?
That has been on for more than 25 years and nothing has happened.
You know, there were concerns as to whether or not it should be.
The state will request for the ownership takeover of Ajaokuta Steel.
If you become governor, would you probe the Yahya Bello administration?
All injustices done to Kogi State will be probed. I don't want you to personalize it to Yahya Bello. It's not about Yahya Bello. It's about the mismanagement of our common patrimony and resources. So all injustices done to Kogi State will not only be probed, but stolen monies will be recovered. There will be alliances, there will be a lot of collaborations, there will be a lot of working together, not only with ADC, even with other political parties. And I'm telling you that we met, other political parties apart from APC met last 2 weeks, and we are meeting again next week. And the talks are on, and our common resolution is that APC must vacate Lugard House, and one of us will be governor of Kogi State.
Now for the full interview, watch Political Paradigm on Tuesday at noon and at 11 p.m. A respite may be coming for about 11,000 out-of-school children and 30,000 internally displaced persons in Niger State. And this is because new schools and low-cost homes are to be built for them as part of the President's renewed hope agenda in the eradication of poverty and reduction of humanitarian crisis in the country. This pledge was made by the Minister of Humanitarian Affairs and Poverty Alleviation, Dr. Betta Edu, when she paid a visit to Gwada LEA Primary School in Shiroro local government area of Niger State.
Presently, we have over 28,500 persons who have been displaced, internally displaced in Niger as a result of banditry and other issues around insecurity. Now, these persons are in about 11 camps. Majority of them are children. About 11,000 children are out of school. And the rest are women in large numbers, over 5,000, and then you have men who are far less. But in the meantime, provide resettlement cities for them, low-cost houses, very low-cost houses where they can move out of the classrooms and other places where they presently occupy to have a befitting place to put their heads. Over 400 schools have been closed down as a result of banditry in Nasarawa State, in Niger State, leaving about 11,000 children out of school. So as a matter of urgency, we'll be working with our partner UNICEF and of course the state government to provide the transit learning areas where children can learn even while they are not in a formal school building, but that's formal education, because education is directly linked with poverty. When children do not go to school, that's the beginning of the cycle of poverty. It's very difficult for them to be able to cope and actually do well growing up in society.
And still ahead on the news at 10, new chairman of the Federal Inland Revenue Service, the state's commitment to achieve federal government's 18% tax GDP target in 3 years. That's business news. Do join us again.
Welcome back. The total unremitted revenues to the Federation account by some government agencies and companies in the oil and gas sector in the year 2021 have risen to over $9.85 billion. The figure is contained in the 2021 Oil and Gas Industry Report by the Nigeria Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative, NAITI. The Executive Secretary of NAITI, Mr. Ogbonaya Oji, made the disclosure while giving a highlight of the 166-page audit report in Abuja.
2 weeks after revealing the nation's 2021 earnings from solid minerals, the Nigeria Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative is unveiling the nation's earnings from oil and gas in 2021. Industry players, regulatory agencies, and members of the civil society are attending the event as the federal government continues its effort to open up the extractive industry to public accountability. The NAITI report captures the activities of 69 companies, the Nigerian Liquefied Natural Gas (NLNG), and 12 other state-owned enterprises. A compilation of the outstanding financial liabilities due to the Federation by the report indicated that a total of $1.342 billion revenues was payable to the Federal Inland Revenue Service and the Nigerian Upstream Petroleum Regulatory Commission by 47 companies, while the NNPC Limited has an outstanding liability of $6.923 billion to the two agencies.
The NNPC, all the companies, they provide us with data, and we also look at their audited financial statements. These revenues were not remitted, and NNPC has their own explanation. I think strongly that this should be brought to the public knowledge, and we have also made our statement. NNPC views on this were also represented in the report. It's a very balanced report, and then we allow the public to judge.
The report also captures the contributions of the oil and gas industry to the economy, including job creation. Also captured in the report is the fuel subsidy payment between 2006 and 2021, which is put at 8.14 trillion naira.
During the period under review, 2 licenses were also issued, were granted by NUPRC as provided in the new PIA. And they are the only agencies that are now saddled with that responsibility for the upstream sector and for the downstream sector, the midstream. Members Petrochemical and Refinery got a license, asset type OML 110, and they were granted that license on the 5th of February 2021.
NAITI wants the government to carry out a comprehensive audit of the fuel subsidy regime. However, a federal lawmaker wants the agency to do more.
There is need to amend the NAITI Act to empower NAITI to take disciplinary actions against offenders. Also, empowering NAITI to investigate offences and recommend the prosecution of offenders by relevant investigative agencies of government. Additionally, in the course of such investigation, NAITI should be able to sanction stakeholders who refuse to collaborate with it in the course of discharging these responsibilities.
The report is then launched. NAITI is urging policymakers to take seriously the findings and recommendations of the report and use the data for economic planning and reforms of the sector.
In other stories, a family-focused educational institution, Greenwood House School, today brought parents together in Lagos to share real-life experiences and insights into effective communication with regard to parenting. The school says the Parent Conference is its response to the evolving and ever-changing world of parenting and is expected to help parents see new ways to navigate the complexities of parenthood. Our correspondent, Dari Dawu, reports.
The Parent Conference, a brainchild of Greenwood House School, an independent and family-friendly institution located in Parkview Estate, Ikoyi, Lagos, is an avenue for parents to compare notes on raising value-driven children. From the special guest to the keynote speaker, the experiences shared on this platform span generations of parents.
Human beings are different because we have babies and we bring them up. And that's the big difference, that they are with us for so long. You know that there are many animals whose children have babies and they never see each other again after they've laid the egg. But here, we train, we discipline, we nurture, we bring up our children. And it's a lifelong task.
You never stop being a parent. So there's no time when one parent stands with a mic and tells you how to do it. Because while you are alike, your children can still shock you. But I pray they won't. Do you see? So I'm not here to tell you I am an expert and I know how to do it. I'm here to tell you we're in it together. Can we learn together? Can we grow together? Is it all right?
This is about encouraging open and honest communication with children.
It's time for panel discussion, and each of the panelists share their diverse yet tested approach to parenting.
Don't do it alone. It takes a village to raise a child. Expose your child to that village.
Certain conversations are held in front of the kids so that they can see that the two of them are on the same page on an issue.
You can be in the car driving home from church. You say, let's go this way. Your wife says, let's go this way. You know, so things like that can come up. But what your kids need to see is effective conflict resolution.
If we need to get them to talk, we have to listen. And then in listening, these kids are very smart. They know when you are just hearing them, you are not listening.
It's the maiden edition of the conference, and the organizers are upbeat about sustaining the initiative.
We've been around for 28 years. We've dealt with all sorts of parents, and the terrain has changed. And so we found out that we're actually in a position now where we're parenting the parents. And we're not saying that any generation has gotten it right. I mean, like, I know my mom, if her mom coughed, they were all checking themselves. I don't want to cough and my children are having anxiety. But we were raised differently. We were disciplined, we were smacked. And as parents sort of spoke at us.
What we are trying to achieve here is to make parents understand that their challenges is not unique to their own. It is a broader base, and I think sharing of those challenges, the sharing of ideas, and just voicing what actually has happened might make things a little bit easier and a little bit more manageable for both the parents as well as the schools.
Engaging, educating, networking, have a blog or a YouTube page that we can continue to encourage parents. As you can see, a lot of parents are dealing with a lot, from bullying to don't know how you're going to talk to your children, what to do. I mean, the gentleman was saying how he's terrified to talk to his child. So how do we help these people overcome it so that they can have that beautiful family, forever?
There are other sessions of the conference focusing on depression, drug abuse, social media addiction, bullying, with different speakers providing solutions to how these vices affecting children and young adults can be nipped in the bud. Dari Idu, Channels Television News.
It's now time for some business news with Joka Rogers.
Thanks, Ayatunde. Welcome to Business News. Acting Chairman of the Federal Inland Revenue Service, Mr. Zach Adedeji, is targeting a tax-to-GDP ratio of 18% within the next 3 years. He made this commitment today when he officially took over from his predecessor, Mohamed Nami. The goal is to surpass Africa's average tax-to-GDP ratio of 16.5%, which he believes would reduce the country's reliance on borrowing and ensure financial sustainability. Nigeria is one of the lowest ranking earners globally, with a tax-to-GDP of 10.8%. Well, 2 million youths and 1 million micro, small and medium enterprise owners chosen from across different parts of the country are set to be trained in digital skills. Vice President Senator Kashim Shettima received an update report on the program today from the Managing Director of Wema Bank PLC, who are partnering the federal government on the initiative. The FGN Alert Digital Skill Innovation Program will be formally launched in Abuja next week by the Vice President. And later this week, the Global Africa Business Initiative, or GABI, will convene its second annual Unstoppable Africa event under the leadership of the United Nations Deputy Secretary General Amina Mohammed. The founder and chairman of BOA Group, Abdul Samad Rabiu, is on ground in New York to support the platform.
Yeah, because Her Excellency, the DSG, invited me to come and participate as one of the council members of GABI, which is the Global Africa Business Initiative. It is an important, platform. It was launched about 2 years ago by Her Excellency Mrs. Amina. And this is an important platform for Africa. It is a platform that will work towards achieving a lot of things in Africa, especially digital transportation. And we're going to discuss that, and we're going to discuss to see how we can add value to the resources that we have in Africa. Africa is sitting on huge resources, but the problem is that we are not able to add value to most of those resources. Infrastructure, transportation. Infrastructure is key. We know that we have a huge deficit as far as infrastructure is concerned in Africa. So that is the platform that I'm one of the 12 council members that Her Excellency invited me to join. So we're here to discuss, and of course also to support His Excellency, as I said, because there are quite a lot of side events taking place.
And back in Nigeria, the equities market resumed the week in positive territory as investors react to the appointment of a new central bank governor. Inijon Mekwa tells us more.
Thank you so much, Joke. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Stock Market Report. Well, the week begins on a positive market breath with 29 stocks gaining and 26 declining. It's a close shave, but the All-Share Index gives us more peace. We see it in the green, 0.71% at 67,395.74, while the market cap looks even better because we have regained our 37 trillion naira, we're 37,150 trillion naira at the close of trade today. O&O PLC announced its audited full-year results, and it posted a profit of 32.9 billion naira after tax. Of course, that information attracted some investors to that stock, but it was not enough to help the counter because of profit-taking on some oil counter, especially like Eternal Oil, and so that's why we see the counter is down 0.38%. Banking, however, looked good because we have FCMB, GTCO, they gained, and brought the counter up 1.43%. Consumer goods is also up 0.16%. So it's a good market, even the oil and gas is down, but we're starting on a positive note, and we hope to keep that going, not like last week, and then have more of the bull in the market.
That's business news. Back to you, Aya, today.
Thank you so much, Joke. Coming up next on the news at 10, 5 American citizens jailed for years in Iran have flown back to the U.S. as part of a prisoner swap. Please stay with us. Welcome back. 5 American citizens jailed for years in Iran are set to be on their way back home in the U.S. as part of a prisoner swap deal. The 4 men and 1 woman, who also hold Iranian passports, took off in a Qatari jet from the Iranian capital, Tehran. Their release was dependent on the transfer of $6 billion in Iranian funds earned from selling oil to South Korea to banks in Doha, which is now said to have been completed. Here's Simon Puser with more on this and other international stories in Around the World in 5.
Good evening and welcome to the Channel's studios here in London with your international news around the world in 5. 5 American citizens jailed for years in Iran have flown back to the US as part of a prisoner swap. The 4 men and 1 woman, who also hold Iranian passports, left Tehran by plane to Doha. Their release is dependent on the transfer of $6 billion in Iranian funds earned from selling oil to South Korea to banks in Doha, which is now said to have been completed. 5 Iranians imprisoned in the US are expected to be freed at the same time as part of the swap, which was mediated by Qatar. US President Joe Biden has long been urged to bring home Americans who have widely been seen as hostages used by Iran as bargaining chips. Confusion continues over the death toll from the disaster in Libya after the United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs announced 11,300 dead and 10,100 missing in Derna. OCHA attributed the death toll to the Libyan Red Crescent, but its spokesman rejected the figures. In a later situation report, OCHA instead cited the World Health Organization figures of 3,958 people dead and more than 9,000 still missing. Russia has called on the International Court of Justice to throw out a case brought against it by Ukraine. Kyiv accuses Moscow of falsely using genocide law to justify its invasion.
Ukraine is not accusing Russia of committing genocide.
Russia maintains that it intervened in Ukraine to prevent a genocidal attack on ethnic Russians in the east. The court hearing in The Hague will not examine the legality of Russia's invasion, but will instead consider whether the International Court is allowed to examine Ukraine's claims. Ukraine says there was no risk of genocide in the east of the country, where it had been fighting Russian-backed forces since 2014. One of Sudan's main landmarks, a skyscraper that towered over the River Nile, has been reduced to a smouldering wreck amid heavy fighting between rival military factions in the capital. The Greater Nile Petroleum Operating Company head office, a glass-sided tower topped with a coil of metal, was built during an oil boom before South Sudan declared independence in 2011 and was one of Sudan's most costly constructions. It is unclear what caused the fire that burned through the tower. The RSF accused the army of targeting it along with other buildings amid efforts to dislodge paramilitary fighters from positions they occupied across the capital early in the conflict. China's top diplomat Wang Yi is visiting Russia for security talks as Moscow seeks continued support for its war in Ukraine. It comes after senior Chinese and US officials held multiple rounds of meetings in Malta over the weekend. A close ally of Moscow, Beijing is accused of supporting Russia indirectly during the war, something it denies. Wang Yi's visit comes after Vladimir Putin's meeting with North Korea's Kim Jong-un that was thought to yield an arms deal. Russian media said Mr. Wang's trip would also lay the ground for Mr. Putin to make a landmark visit to Beijing soon. An almost fully dinosaur skeleton will be sold at auction in Paris next month. The rare 150-million-year-old Camptosaurus was first discovered in the 1990s in the US by paleontologist Barry James. Named Barry after the man who found him in Wyoming, experts said he is extremely well preserved. The skeleton is expected to fetch up to $1.2 million, dating back to the late Jurassic period and after 2 restorations in 2000 and 2022. Barry measures 6.9 feet tall and 16.4 feet long. And that's your international news around the world in 5. Now back to the Channel studios in Lagos.
Thanks, Simon. And back here at our sports center, barely hours after winning our 3rd successive Diamond League crown, Toby Amushan will be heading to the Court of Arbitration for Sport. The reason? The Athletics Integrity Unit had on September the 15th filed an appeal against the Disciplinary Tribunal's decision that the World 100 meters hurdles champion Amushan did not commit an anti-doping rule violation for her bowels failure. So we're going to look out and see how that plays out for the champ. In the meantime, the 2023-2024 UEFA Champions League will kick off on Tuesday night with 6 fixtures, including defending champions Manchester City taking on 1991 season's champion Red Star Belgrade at the Etihad. City's coach Pep Guardiola is, however, not getting carried away by the defending champions tag, insisting in his words that they have not done anything special by winning just 1 Champions League crown.
For our club to win the Champions League is something incredible. But in perspective for the Champions League, so how many teams won 1 Champions League? Just 1. A lot. But there is a lot won 2, a lot won 3, a lot won 4, a lot won 5. There is 1 team won a lot. So in perspective of the Champions League, we didn't do anything special. We just won. So, but for us, of course, if the club didn't have it and be part of that, is incredibly proud of.
Nothing special for him. Meanwhile, Newcastle United are bracing for their Champions League clash against AC Milan following their return to Europe's biggest club competition for the first time In 20 years, the Magpies have spent more time in the English Championship than facing Europe's elite for the past 2 decades, but are aiming to follow the footsteps of Man City by turning their Ugwu State back into glory at home and abroad. And crowds of Iranian football fans gave Cristiano Ronaldo's Saudi Al Nassr an excited welcome earlier today as his Saudi team arrived in Tehran for the first time for the home and away club tie since the two countries resumed diplomatic relations. Fans chanted the name of Portuguese 5-time World Player of the Year as he arrived with his teammates to face Iran's leading club, Persepolis, in the Asian Champions League on Tuesday. And that's it on sports. Ayotunde, it's back to you.
Thank you so much, Jeffrey. And the main news again. Talks between representatives of the federal government and the Nigerian Labour Congress to resolve the impasse over the fuel subsidy removal, palliative and other matters today ended without a resolution. And 5 American citizens jailed for years in Iran have flown back to the United States as part of a prisoner swap deal. That's the news at 10 tonight. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Ayotunde Balogun. Do have a good night.